Hey guys, Christy here with Little Roots Ranch, and it's March! How exciting! I'm here in the greenhouse, and I know a few of you have asked how warm my greenhouse gets. So, the answer is very warm. Outside temperature, not in the greenhouse, but outside is 35 degrees. And I brought my thermometer. It's slow to like increase temperature because it's an oven thermometer. So not the best tool. But right now it's reading about 75. And obviously, even though it's basically at freezing and there is snow on the ground, I'm still warm in a t-shirt. So the greenhouse gets really, really warm. It is literally 75 degrees in here. And at filming, today is February 22nd. So you may be seeing this later, but it's right. It snowed last night and the day before, which was something I was not expecting. I woke up and I thought I was in a dream because I checked the weather like all day, every day, and especially with planning, because I knew that the very beginning of March or the end of February, there was going to be a cold snap. And so I was trying to time my seedlings going outside into the greenhouse, because of course daytime temperatures, it's so warm. It's actually, now it's up to almost 80. I bet you it's like 80 degrees in here right now. Let me see. Oh, as I fall. Here's my thing. I don't know if you can see it. It's not the most advanced tool that I have, but it works. But anyways, sorry, enough about my random ramblings. I just wanted to let you know it gets really warm in here. The greenhouse does have roll-up sides, but I'm saving that, of course, for more of like the actual spring, and then of course into summer to help cool it down, because that'll be my problem, is that the greenhouse will get too hot real easily, because as you can see, it's 35 outside and it's 80 degrees inside, so it definitely warms up. Anyways, sorry, it just rained on me. One thing about a greenhouse, it rains on the inside. That's something you should know. All the condensation collects like on the top and just comes down. And so sometimes it gets me in the eyes.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Oh, my watch is talking to me. But so if you see me like go like that, it's just because of the rain. But anyways, happy March. So exciting. Like, this is one of the most, like, I guess I get really excited about every single month of gardening, but like December and January, it's like basically onions. Onion starts. There's not like a whole lot that you can really do. Then it gets into peas. February opens up a little bit more, mostly stuff for transplant, but March really opens up, and that's so exciting. So I'm going to talk about some gardening tasks that you want to make sure that you've done or are doing, and then I'll talk about things that you can plant outdoors, plant under cover, like say in a greenhouse or under cloche or whatever, or agribon, and then of course transplants to start inside to transplant out later. So March is really, it's really unpredictable. It's a mixture of sunny days that are like, oh hey, it's March, and also days that are overcast and rainy and cold. And like, as a gardener, you have to be able to roll with the punches as far as what the weather's doing, and being able to, it's hard because you want to anticipate, like everybody's placing their bets for when the last frost is going to be, which is usually beginning of April, but like, and so it's hard, like we get like that fake spring, like our weather has been so great, and then we had that random snowstorm, so that was interesting. So that's one thing you want to be aware of. The plants, if you have them, whether in the greenhouse or if you have some outside under cover, they're still going to be growing slowly. It's just with the temperature and the daylight length, it's unavoidable. You know, even in this greenhouse, obviously it's 80 degrees. That could quote unquote sustain a tomato very easily. But there's a couple of factors. One, the sun is shining today, really, really bright sun. And so that's contributing to a higher than normal temperature in the greenhouse. But at night, the greenhouse, like some of the heat stays, but not very much. So effectively in the middle of the night, it's the same temperature outside as it is inside. And that isn't sustainable for tomatoes. So don't rush too much. I know we all get really excited, and I totally get that because I'm like the most excited person on earth. But it's really important. Just take it slow, and I promise it'll be okay. One thing though for March that you want to start doing is you want to start your slug patrols. Slugs are monstrous in our area, and there's no easy option. If you're the chemical type of gardener, then I guess there might be with like Sluggo or whatever. I personally don't use that. I try and run the ducks through in the off season, which I've cut them off because, you know, getting ready to go to start gardening and stuff like that. But honestly, trapping them and plucking them are, in my opinion, the best natural way to collect them. And then there's beer traps too. But so what I'll sometimes do is take like a 10-20 tray, I've showed you those, and I set it upside down in different areas of the garden, and they like to hide out in that tray specifically in the middle of the night, or like to spend the night in there. And in the morning I just flip them over, collect all the slugs. Did you say that again? Stop. Sorry, my watch keeps talking to me and it's driving me insane. Anyway, so I just flip all the trays over in the morning and I give the ducks a little bit of a breakfast. So that's one way that I do it. I haven't done the beer trap only because I have such a large garden, but I've heard really great results. Is where you take like a yogurt container or something, like a little bowl, and you dig down a little bit so it's flush with the surface, and then you put beer. I heard that the cheapest beer works best, and you pour a little beer in there, and the slugs go in and don't come out. And then you have to obviously replace it. You collect the slugs and replace it if it rains and stuff like that. I guess slugs absolutely love beer, like probably like Coors Light or something like that. I'm not sure. But that's something I might try it because I've never tried it, but I've seen a lot of people swear that it works, and so that might be a pretty good thing. Slugs are a real problem for you when you first put out your transplants, or if you've direct seeded and the little baby plants start coming up, because they're so tender and delicious, right? And they're most delicious to a monstrous slug. And so with how slow the plant is growing, a slug could easily take out a little baby seedling, whereas it would just put holes in, say, a larger plant. So the early springtime, March, and of course it continues, right? Slugs don't necessarily go away. But that's when you really want to be on the hunt. And I always pick up every slug I walk by because I read somewhere, I don't know if it's true or not, but that slugs lay 4,000 eggs. And so every time I pick up a slug, I just keep a mental number. And then I think about how many like thousands or tens of thousands of slug babies that I've stopped. So it makes me feel better because even if I get one, then I see that as that I've stopped 4,000. So that might be a good like game to play with yourself too. And then a few other things that you want to do is I always say this, but if you are going to have trellises, like make sure you know what you're going to use. Make sure you have them, you know, it's never too late or never too early to like put them up, even if you don't have the seedlings there. Because I feel like we always think like with cucumbers or like pole beans or peas or whatever, we're always thinking, oh, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to trellis, like I'll get to that. And you put the seedlings in, they start growing a little bit and like, okay, I'll get to it. And then like the time has come and gone and your your cucumber plant, instead of being like a beautiful little like vine trellis thing, is like spread out all over the ground. You can't even walk. Like if you try and harvest the cucumbers, you're like stepping on the tendrils and all that stuff. And it's just a mess. So I always say this a million times over. I'm also guilty of it. I'm also the worst. But think about your trellises. It's okay to have them up before you even have the plant. Like just take care of it now. And then you don't have to play that game later where you're trying to like, you know, add it in or it's too late or whatever. Just get it in and then you're okay. The other thing I wanted to touch on was compost. Obviously, I have a lot of it. But compost, when is the best time to get compost? Honestly, in the fall. Because you can get it, you want to tarp it, and then you can just let it sit and it continues to break down. Because we're, at least on like the West Coast, I have never gotten like fully aged, amazing compost, ready to work compost. All the compost I've gotten from all the places, and it's literally everywhere, is still hot. And that's just, the way that it works, I guess they would probably charge like triple or quadruple or something if it sat for a really long time. So it's going to be, there's different degree, like some of them are hotter than others, or if you will, but nonetheless, they're still going to be like that. The best way to like is to age it yourself, because then you know exactly like what's going on. But clearly the fall has come and gone, and there's nothing we can do about that. For me, I personally didn't get a truck in time, and there's like a little stream on my, it's a irrigation, like waterway or whatever. Sorry, I'm sitting weird on my leg. Okay. It's like a waterway, and, but then once that fills up, I can't get anything across it, like a truck or whatever. And so once I realized, and I could have kicked myself, but it, you know, it is what it is. So I had a large amount delivered. Now I got it as early as I can, and that's going to be my recommendation to you. If you can get your compost ASAP and just allow it to sit a little longer, I feel like you have a better chance of not getting as hot of compost, because, you know, when you're thinking about gardening is when everybody else is going to be thinking about gardening. And so you want to get, like, I had my compost delivered like, I think a month ago, a little over. I honestly, I can't remember. But, you know, and everyone's going to be ordering it. So those compost factories or whatever they're called, plants, mills, I don't know, they're just pumping it out. And as soon as they can get it broken down a little bit, get up to the temperature, and then pushing it out, you know, and that's just the way that it works. Sorry, my leg is like falling off. Ugh. Okay, I think you can still see me. I'm just a little lower. But so if you're using compost, especially a large amount of compost, my recommendation is get it now. Even if you don't need it just yet or whatever, and of course years going forward, try and get it in the fall. If you don't, try and get it as early like spring/winter or late winter, whatever that you can. And I promise your garden will be better for it. So let's see here. All right. And so now we're going to talk about what to sow indoors, undercover, and outside. Now, there's you'll see some overlap with some of the plants, and you know, some stuff you can transplant indoor or start indoors to transplant outside, and some stuff you can already transplant outside. And that comes down to a personal decision on your behalf as far as what you're ultimately looking for. So if you don't have like an indoor seed setup area, or you've only got like a small light or an inferior light or something like that, then, sorry, it's hot. It's reading above 90 degrees. It's literally, hold on, let me show you this. So this is in the greenhouse, and I think you can see it, but it's like off the chart. My thing only goes to 90. So it's like above 90. But anyways, I'm like so hot right now, and it's literally 35 degrees outside, like outside of the greenhouse. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so whether you start indoors or outside, it honestly comes down to like your specific setup and like what you're looking for. It is so much easier to just throw seeds in the ground and let them come up when it's like a more appropriate time. You're gonna have a stronger root system. They'll be more adapted. They're better at us than like knowing Mother Nature and what they need in the exact temperature that they're gonna sprout for like their optimal whatever. Sorry, you can see the water coming down. There's a slight wind. But anyways, you know, and so that's a lot easier than I listed some of the pros. There are some cons. Germination percentage is gonna be way lower. You're never gonna get the same germination rate like outside that you will get inside. It literally doesn't happen. But also space limited, or space inside is limited. So that's something that you want to think about as well, because that's important, right? You know, and how you're managing stuff. And so, or what your competing stuff is. Like, you know, my routine, I do the onions first, get those out of the way. I have some successions that I continue on, but for the most part, they're done. Then I do like my more hardy things like the spinaches and hardy greens and like cabbages, stuff like that. And I keep rolling out several of those, get my cauliflowers, all like brassicas, all those things out of the way. They can come out into the greenhouse and hang out. And then ultimately leading up to peppers and then tomatoes My tomatoes are basically last. I don't rush the tomatoes. I think that's what everyone loves to do, is to get the tomatoes in as fast as possible. I really find that the plants are not as great if you rush them, because all the potting up, even though tomatoes are excellent at being transplanted and potting up and all that stuff, but that's a lot of work. But then again, it depends on your situation, because if you're, let's say, in an apartment on a patio and you only have 2 pots for tomatoes, like, you can dedicate a lot of time to taking care of those 2 tomatoes and adjusting the lights and finding space and things like that. Whereas me, you know, I'll be starting like, you know, over 100 tomatoes or something like that. And so I can't, like, potting each of those up is like miserable, you know? And so again, a lot of things with gardening, it really depends on like your situation and what you want to do. And there's no like real rights or wrongs. And like, people have different circumstances and different things, that like microclimates and all that stuff. So I just wanted to say that. So whether or not you choose to start things inside or wait and start them outside or do a little bit of both, excuse me, you know, it's totally up to you. And, you know, it's just learning lessons, right? You know, like, and we're all different, and there is no wrong way. Like, that's one thing with, you know, when I share my gardening practices, this is just things that I do that does, you know, some work really well, some don't always, you know, or some might work for me and not work for somebody else, and vice versa. So, but anyways, let's get into the exciting part, the seed starting. So I wrote like a little list so I wouldn't forget. And I'm gonna move to the side because I learned how to put a little picture right here. So I'm really excited about that. So let me move to the side. All right, so we're gonna talk about what to sow outdoors. So that's outside, like where the snow is currently. You can see the snow. I didn't know if you could see it through the things, but anyways, that's for outside, right? And this is in March. And so you can do leafy greens, of course, all peas, garbanzo beans, spinach, Swiss chard, cilantro, fennel, parsley, arugula, Asian greens, radishes, turnips. And in late March, you can do tubers of potatoes and Jerusalem artichokes. Now, I know a lot of people are really eager to get the potatoes in earlier, and that's a-okay if that works for you. I personally, I just wait a little bit on my potatoes. I find that they get like, that they'll like rot or whatever, and so that's just when I do mine. If you've planted them earlier than me for, you know, ever and a half, like, that's awesome. But this is just when I plant mine. So, and then for sowing under cover, which would be like in a greenhouse or under a cloche or under like Agribond or some kind of fabric or whatever. And that would be your beets, spinach, Swiss chard, carrots, parsley, arugula, Asian greens, broccoli raw, cabbage, Chinese cabbage, collards, kale, mustard, radishes, endive, and lettuce. So that's exciting. Excuse me. And the last category is to sow indoors to transplant outside. And that is rhubarb, celery, fennel, parsley, spinach, basically all herbs. Like, by herbs, I mean like, what is it? As I can't think of anything. A lot of them are in the mint family, but like marjoram and savory and lemon balm and things like that. Broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, collards, ground cherries, peppers, tomatoes, tomatillos, scallions, and leeks. And those are for like succession if you haven't planted it, or if you planted them already or planted them new or whatnot. And so, like I said, there are some overlap between the 3 categories, but you can, excuse me, I have to like yell, but you can choose whatever, you know, method works best for you, given your like growing area and how much room you have inside. So also, I wanted to add in, several of you have asked for like more flower stuff. And so these are flowers to sow outdoors. Now, there's a pretty comprehensive list, and I thought about doing a video just for flowers, and I still might for March, but I just wanted to give a quick, because I don't know if more people are more vegetables or more flowers or whatever, but a quick list of flowers to sow outdoors, just the most common ones, not you know, ones that I can't even pronounce, but the most common ones. So like forget-me-nots, larkspur, sweet pea, lupine, poppies, bachelor buttons, calendula, and feverfew. And of that, I definitely am getting calendula started. And then to sow indoors to transplant is going to be begonia, daisy, china aster, marigold, cosmos, zinnias, and straw flowers. And so straw flowers is on my list to grow one day. I have not grown them yet, but I will be starting my zinnias, my cosmos, and my marigolds. So of those flowers, those are the 4 ones: the zinnia, cosmo, marigold, and calendula. One of these days I want to grow the sweet peas too. I actually think I might have, if I have seeds, I will start them now. If I don't, then I will do that next year. But yeah, so those are all of the things that you can start inside, start outside, and start to transfer or transplant, whatever. And so it's really exciting time, you know, just go ahead and start everything. Don't get too overwhelmed. If you make a mistake or something's not doing so well, like that's okay, you know, like it's just learn from it, you know, and that happens. Even people who are experienced, you know, have a bad batch or forget to put the light too close or something like that. Like, don't be hard on yourself, you know. And just the last tip, and I know I've said this a million times, but if you're starting under grow lights, make sure that your almost fell over. Make sure that your grow lights are close enough to where they can be like inches from your starts. And that's so important, because if it's not, especially because the grow light's artificial, right? And so it's not providing everything that the sun, so those plants, especially if you have it up high, you lose like the UVs and all that other stuff. Like, it's just not full spectrum, like it can't be, you know, like as far as like the sun. And so they're just gonna be growing taller. But if you have something like, say, cabbage, and it's really long, or they call it leggy, you know, it's gonna be a weakened stem, and you want it to support that big, massive, delicious cabbage, but it's not going to. You know, you can plant some of them you can plant a little deeper, like tomatoes. A little leggy is okay because you can plant more down, but just take your time and everything will be okay. If you, like always, if you have any questions or comments, or if you're new to gardening or anything like that, or you want to let me know where you're at, go ahead and drop those down in the comments below. I really appreciate you watching, and I'm excited to get out of here because I'm so hot. I'm literally like sweating. Well, the temperature still says the same because it only goes up to like 95, but literally it's that warm in here. Like, I'm like getting a suntan. Well, maybe not, but you know what I mean. But anyways, thank you for watching. Happy gardening.